in terms of energy systems and Bitcoin mining per se. So it's a pleasure and honor to be here and to interact. And as Brain's perspective is to have a footprint in Africa and to see how we can leverage electricity access vis-a-vis utilization. For now, I can end there for my short introduction.
So I was surprised to hear he's first time in Nairobi, because we obviously go to the same barber, and actually, so Brains is actually really an honor to be up here with somebody from Brains. Brains is one of the oldest Bitcoin companies. I've been doing Bitcoin mining longer than most of us have heard about Bitcoin, right? So they actually have a huge amount of status, and it's a real honor to be with Dr. Laban on stage. Eric from Gridless, you just heard me talk. We do Bitcoin mining mostly in off-grid sites. We try and find energy that's stranded in rural Africa. And we come in because usually only 20 or 30% of the power that's being generated is being absorbed by the local community. And that means that the power generation company is not even solvent, like they can't make ends meet. So our job is to come in there, use that excess stranded power, monetize it, and we share that with them. And so all of a sudden they become a profitable business. We make sats, we make our Bitcoin, and then the community benefits, because generally speaking, the power price drops for them, and they are able to expand the grid very rapidly. I can talk to that a little bit more later.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Laban. Thank you, Eric. So next, we're gonna move on to some direct questions. So we can start with Eric from Grid. So the first direct question, Eric. So given your work scaling gridless mini grids for the community, how do you recommend we can move from pilot mining projects to national infrastructure that can anchor rural electrification?
So the question on that is a little two-pronged, right? So we can scale already doing rural electrification with Bitcoin mining and monetizing that stranded power. It's already happening. We have almost 4 years under our belt of doing it. Real data, we can show you the numbers, right? The second question was, how do we scale that into the large national grid? Because obviously what we're doing is off-grid. We're not part of the national grid. Well, the answer to that lies into like these 17 research papers on energy, and specifically energy in Africa, that I read 3 years ago. And I realized, the grid only goes so far in Africa, and the government's not pushing it any further because they don't get a good return on investment for doing so either, because there's too many parts of Africa that have a sparse population density. So the only answer for them is to have off-grid power, right? To have their own mini grid built. Now, there is an answer to how about the stranded power that's on grid, right? We've seen that in Ethiopia. It was 2 years ago in January that they went from 0 to 600 megawatts of curtailment power in Ethiopia in 10 months. That's unbelievably fast, right? So there is a way to do it. The problem generally lies, and I know Laban, because we both had to deal with this in Zambia. The problem actually lies in our own governments, right? Most of them are fat cats sitting happy because they have a cash cow called KenGen or KPLC, and people are making money, right? So yeah, there's some wasted power across the country, but they don't really care because they're making money, right? That's the problem. So if you're coming to them and saying, hey, listen, you've got this 40 megawatts of stranded power on Turkwell Dam, right? I'll say, okay, I'll say, hey, listen, I can pay you, let's do revenue share on that, 30/70, whatever. I'll bring all the money. I'll bring all the operations. There's nothing you have to do. You just make money. They're like, but it's worth 7 cents. There's no miner in the world who's making money mining on 7-cent power, right? That's not happening, right? So it just doesn't happen. Where do miners end up going? They go to where the power is cheap, always, every time, right? It's like pouring water on an uneven floor. The water always goes to the lowest point. So why are they in Ethiopia? It's because it's 2.9 cents. That's why.
Thanks, Eric.
Wait. Please. Can we hear about Zambia? Because I didn't want to say Zambia stuff. You say Zambia stuff. Like, you've been trying to work with these guys and you're trying to be with the grid guys.
Yeah, if you can live with my Zambian English accent. Oh, well, I want to refine what you said, stranded power, into something like I would like to call stranded economic value. And especially when speaking to politicians, and when you're saying stranded energy, then what they have in the mind is access. And you can't believe it. Africa is almost 1.5 billion people, and 600 million people have no access to electricity. And this is daunting, because 600 million, you're talking about 4 in every 10 Africans, sub-Sahara, they have no access to electricity. But again, if you look at electricity access, it's completely different from utilization of electricity. And this is where I think Eric was talking about stranded power. And if I can bring the brain's perspective, we do firmware as well for ASIC machines, which is making miners to mine more Bitcoins under harsh conditions, especially in Africa. And so, to cut the long story short, I wanted to emphasize that electricity access vis-a-vis electricity utilization, and also the opportunity which Bitcoin mining brings on the utilization part, efficient energy utilization part, which is an opportunity for Africa. I mean, it does not exist anywhere else. If you look at 60% of renewable energy resources in the world is lying in Africa. So are we energy poor or utilization poor? This is a question for everyone to answer as far as electricity access is concerned in Africa. As far as utilities in Africa, they're concerned on access, but no one really is talking about utilization. Is what is produced. I want to call it economical value instead of stranded energy. What is produced efficiently utilized? These are questions I think maybe we can even ask the audience to answer, because if I have a mini grid, 1 megawatt, and the community is powering the community 100 or 50 kilowatts out of 1 megawatt, and what remains is, would you like to have energy which has no demand? It's useless.
Dr. Laban, I'm going to make a direct question to you.
Sure.
So, following up from your experience with Brains, what are the operational realities of running high-performance mining hardware in East Africa and the Africa field conditions, like the heat and so on from Africa? And how can optimization from Brains overcome heat and reliability challenges?
I think that's a realistic question, because at Brains we are dealing with the OS, the software stack. We are providing the firmware, which is doing auto-tuning of miners, which means miners are able to overclock or underclock. It's something like in the heated scenarios, but experience has it that mining can be anywhere. It's what the software would do on the ASIC chips in terms of dynamic performance, auto-tuning or scaling, which enables miners to mine more Bitcoins under the conditions. Having said that, then there's a dimension also of heat reuse. In Africa, often than not, heat is not a waste. It's a product of Bitcoin mining. As the miners, they've gone, they were here. The miners are producing 60 to 70% Celsius. That heat can be used for agriculture use. The thing is, miners go where energy is rather than the other way around. So if we have agricultural perishables, things like tobacco, cocoa, coffee, drying. You mean Bitcoin mining as a byproduct? It is a byproduct which can be used for agricultural purposes for communities around where Bitcoin mining is happening. So for Africa, it's a twofold, especially when you're talking of renewables, and the perspective at Brains is that we producing software stack for enhancing performance of miners, as well as the mining machines, which on the mining side, most of the farms for Brains are in Texas, in America. And I want to believe that, I haven't been to Texas, I want to believe that the environmental conditions are not worse than we have in Africa. The temperatures ranging 40 degrees Celsius.
Yeah, it gets super hot in Texas too, and dusty. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, can I just say we use Brains on one of our sites, and Brains software in that operating system that he's talking about, what they build, allows us to run these miners more efficiently. Sometimes you need to underclock it to deal with temperatures or just the energy that you have available. Other times you need to overclock it so that you make more Bitcoin per hour, right? And it depends on what the environment is. So they do some really good software, and we really like using it. There's a saying, right, that what are the two outputs of a Bitcoin miner? Bitcoin and heat. Okay. Most of us think about the Bitcoin, but the heat can be used. So we have some friends who are called Big Block Data Center just outside of Goma. They run a whole operation using that to dry cocoa beans that goes to make chocolate, right? So this is used in Africa already.
Right.
Just to add on that, I would see that as probably a technological challenge rather than a problem in terms of harvesting the heat and making sure that there is a balanced ecosystem in terms of renewables and also the beneficiation, especially on the African context.
Okay, thank you. Now for some open questions. Let's start first with Eric, then Dr. Laban. So an open question, like, will Africa ever control more than 10% of the global hash rate? And what role do mini grids with the community approach or optimized hardware play? What Brains is helping? How can help achieve that? So let's maybe give it 5 minutes to Eric, 5 minutes to Dr. Laban.
Well, if I need 5 minutes for this, we have problems. So 10% of the hash rate is a lot. But does anybody know what the total hash rate coming out of Ethiopia is for the globe? Anybody? Yeah, about 3.5, almost 4%. So we're already at almost 4% of the global hash rate from one country in Africa. So do I think we'll get to 10%? Easily, right? The answer for that is easily. And the reason is because of the global macro that's happening right now around AI. AI is going to go and pay more for the energy than Bitcoin miners ever will. That means they will push Bitcoin mining off the shelves of these data centers that are big Bitcoin miners right now in the States. And if you read any of the news, you see that they're transitioning all their data centers from Bitcoin mining into AI because they get paid 10 times as much per kilowatt hour. So yes, they're going to land somewhere. Where are those miners going to land? Latin America, Africa, certain parts of Asia. The question we should have is not just are they showing up in Africa, but how decentralized is it? Is it 1 or 2 or 5 companies that do all the big hash rate here? Or is it smaller companies, smaller in smaller countries as well? That's where we should be asking questions and where we should be driving for this to go.
Right, Dr. Laban?
Yeah, that's a loaded question. And I would want to say, if we look a decade, maybe in the next decade, Africa can have at least 10% of the hash rate of the world. But again, in Africa, we need to change the mindset. There's a lot of work on the mindset, especially on policymakers, because if you look at underutilization of energy is quite eminent in Africa than in Europe or America, the efficient utilization. But again, the thing is, to be honest, when utilities see Bitcoin mining on the balance sheet, they raise eyebrows, like what is going on? But again, when policymakers understand that if you are using mini grids and you've got 80% energy which has no buyer, why not monetize it? And that can improve economic growth, employment. I think the mindset must change towards education, probably. If you mention that you start talking about job creation, economic growth, GDP, politicians like that kind of talk. But immediately you advance Bitcoin, then you get a pushback. And that's what makes most inefficiencies in utilization, especially in mini grids. Most mini grids are overbuilt, kind of $48 million to build probably a 10 megawatt mini grid, but again, only 10% is used by the community. The rest is not connected to the grid, and it goes spillage. Most utilities also, they've got spillage in terms of hydro spillage. I visited one in Zambia, actually. There was 100 drop spillage 24/7. I was asking them, that's gold, that's money. They said, no, that's maintenance. I said, but I mean, we can monetize that. And the money realized can be used for infrastructure, capital infrastructure, because as you know, transmission, distribution costs money of energy. And this is why one thing Africa can leverage on, we move our mining infrastructure where energy is produced. And that presents an opportunity for Africa to ramp up the hash rate by first changing the mindset to see Bitcoin as a tool for efficient, smart energy, kind of intelligent energy utilization. And that once that mindset changes, then we see Africa as potential for in the next decade we will reach that milestone.
Can I just say something real quick? Who here is from Kenya? Raise your hand. From Kenya. Okay. At least half the room. Who remembers a couple of years ago, we had like 3 nationwide power outages, and it was always because monkeys jumped on the line. Who remembers that? Right? Do you guys remember that story? That happened 3 times in 1 year, right? So when we talk about national grids, one of the things that happens is you have to, up until now, people have been building peaker plants. What peaker plants do is when there's a massive draw on one part of the grid, the peaker plant turns on really quickly, usually just a couple minutes, and it supplies that excess energy. The rest of the time, it's really kind of just idling. It's like your car is idling, right? And so, but they're paid for the full amount of energy that they don't produce every day, right? That's a problem. That is a waste of capital in today's day and age. Really, what Bitcoin mining should be doing in countries like Kenya or Zambia or Malawi or name it, Mozambique, is that we should be thinking about this as an inverse peaker plant. We should be showing up everywhere on the grid where there's leftover power, some stranded energy, and we soak it up all the time. And in less than 1 second, a sub-second response time, we can turn off. So now when you need extra draw from the grid, you don't need to turn a bigger plant on. You just need to turn off all the miners. Turns out that's what they've been doing in Texas for the last 5 years, right? It's not rocket science. It's not new, but it's something that our grids should be thinking about doing. Now, the big question is why not? Why are they not doing it? And Laban's right? It's like, listen, these guys, they hear the word Bitcoin and they're like, oh my goodness, I don't want to be seen as being one of those people, right? It's a perception problem, right? But we have an advantage in Africa, which is we have poor governments, and governments need money. So if we can show them how they make money, like they did in Ethiopia, they made over $100 million of hard currency in the first year of operating those Bitcoin miners. That's a lot of real currency that comes in that they needed. So these same things can be done in other countries too, and we need to make the business case for them to do this, both on the grid level, is why it stabilizes the grid, but also on the business level, how it makes them money.
Thank you. Actually, you went a little bit in my next question, but I'll give you more time. So the next open question is following on this topic. Like, how do we explain properly the environmental benefits of Bitcoin mining to skeptical local politicians in a way that connects to their policy priority? Maybe you can start, Eric, 5 minutes, and Dr. Laban, 5 minutes. How can you convince them?
I mean, yeah, I think the way I've been talking about it. So we do deal, like, because gridless is kind of known. When governments start thinking about Bitcoin mining in Africa, we often get a phone call. We end up talking to somebody from the Office of the President or the Ministry of Energy for our country. And oftentimes they're curious about, mostly it comes from, what are those guys in Ethiopia doing, right? Because they're seeing real money there. And we say, well, listen, what they're doing is they're making use of their stranded power because they don't have a good distribution network, and and they have too much. There's excess. And then we explain it to them. They say, well, I have a dam that's 60 megawatts, but we only draw down 30 megawatts in any given day. I say, well, great. You have 30 megawatts of stranded power that can be utilized then. And they're like, oh, okay. Now, so there's always the first level respondent is actually interested. That's why they reached out, right? But the problem you have gets locked up in bureaucracy and specifically technocrats because there's no upside for them, right? And, in Kenya, we all know what that means, right? The problem is this is a numbers game. Bitcoin mining is a numbers game. It is probably the most free market of all markets. And that is brutal, right? Like, either you're able to do this efficiently and make money, or you're not and you die. It's that simple. Okay. So when somebody comes in, you say, okay, listen, and you say, okay, let's do this thing. We'll do this revenue share. We'll pay you 3 cents per kilowatt hour. And they say, okay, that's great. But then doesn't make sure you pay me another 2 cents per kilowatt hour to this other wallet. Like, no. It doesn't work that way, right? It can't work that way. Like, and nobody will work that way, right? Even the Chinese won't work that way because they don't make enough money to survive. It's that simple. So we have a problem with in the bureaucratic sense more than we have in the political sense.
Yeah, I look at that as twofold. One is to convince policymakers to change the mindset, and the other one is to talk to utility companies, because recently I checked one of the data sheets for a utility company. It's exporting power, importing power using diesel, and also a base load, which is constantly at 70% running. But you come to think of it, how can you import power and at the same time export? Which means that there's a problem there, because if you come to think of it, if utility companies can be convinced that there is flexi-load, smart energy systems, of which, of course, Bitcoin comes as a tool for flexi-load balancing of the grid, that at night, obviously, energy consumption is not as good as during the day. You've got peak loads when you have surplus, and that can be channeled to Bitcoin mining. And also leveraging in the sense that using diesel to power the plants is very expensive. And it boggles the mind. How do you export, import, and then use diesel? And again, that shows lack of flexible load balancing. And this is where Bitcoin comes in, Bitcoin mining as a tool to balance the grid. And for policymakers, politicians, I think we need to emphasize on job creation, GDP growth. We need to talk about emerging technologies, of course, which Bitcoin is supporting, AI, emerging technologies, which the language they can understand, to shift the mindset. And then, believe me or not, if you talk about job creation, investment, and having bankable projects, then Bitcoin can come like a by the way thing. But obviously, we want to emphasize Bitcoin mining because it's bringing monetizing energy almost immediately. I was talking to Eric earlier on that there is a sage in Africa for rare earth critical elements. I'm sure you are aware about that. Rare earth elements are being used for electric cars, electric vehicles, and electronics. And there is a stage now to mining rare earth minerals requires energy. Mining bitcoins requires energy, except that their rare earth minerals are monetizing geology, and we are monetizing energy for instant value, which can be used to recapitalize infrastructure and also to create jobs. And I think every politician wants jobs for the country, and this is where we should emphasize that Bitcoin mining is strategic infrastructure, just as well as we have critical minerals mining infrastructure. And once we leverage that, then we'll be in business to convince.
I was laughing earlier about this because I was like, the problem is that the politicians or the bureaucrats can touch rare earth minerals. They can actually literally touch them, right? But it's hard to touch a Bitcoin.
Yeah. All right. So let's move on to the next open question. Let's give 5 minutes each, and then we move on to Q&A with the audience. So on the topic of scaling Bitcoin mining, scale Bitcoin mining in Africa. So we have so from Gridless we have the Juakali product solution, which is like an informal mining solution for small communities. Is that approach feasible for scaling in small communities, or for scaling does it require industrial grade solution? Maybe that will be the brains approach. So let's go, Eric, and then
listen, I think there's two questions that you need to think about when it comes to Bitcoin mining. There's scaling the hash rate, like how many megawatts are under management, and that's a scale thing. That's how much percentage of the hash rate is done in Africa. That's that question. But there's also an equally important question for all of us as Bitcoiners, which is, what's the decentralization of Bitcoin mining, right? Because we're all our Bitcoin is secured by the miners, right? Like it's a critical component of the security of the network, right? And it's made more secure the more decentralized it is, because it's not as easy to target. Okay. Now, if I'm one company running 100 megawatts in Ethiopia, it's really easy to shut me down. It's really hard to shut down 5,000 farmers across 5 countries. So is Juakali as a technology, going to scale to 100 megawatts in those households? No, right? Or in those smallholder farms and those small industries? No. But does it help with the decentralization of the Bitcoin network? Massively.
Yeah. At Brains, we have mini miners, which is one terahash.
Do you have major miners or mini miners? Or?
The mini miners, we leverage on the S21s for the typical.
It's what's the name of it again? There's this really, you've seen the BitAxe that's sitting at our booth, like the BitShoka, but they make one at Brains, which is a small little miner as well.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's ideal for hobbyists and getting the circular economy going through. Seeing is believing. I was thinking of bringing some for this conference, but I think maybe next year. But the mini miners will help for educationalists because it's seeing something working where people can be educated about joining maybe the Brains pool or another pool or solo mining, which can enhance education and also decentralization especially for Gen Z kind of communities to educate and show in practice how the mini miners are doing. And this is something, they're noiseless. They do not, it's like 40 watts, one small kind of mini miner. If you go to the Prince website, you see them there in stock. And again, it hinges on education and educate. So we hope that many communities can embrace once they see the mining happening itself.
Can I say there's an important part of what is going on with mining. When we first started, we were wondering that is the government going to be against us? Question you have to ask, right? Are they going to be actually trying to shut you down? And the answer is no, because you're helping with electrification of areas that they're responsible for, and they're not doing their job, right? So by coming in, the community loves it because you really bring electricity to them. So nobody has a problem with what you do there. And on top of that, the Ministry of Energy or the energy company in the country, they're super happy to have us around. We're good allies everywhere we go, which was a nice surprise for us to find out, after the first year of operation.
Yeah, like a mini miner is 40 watts. It's like a bulb. So I keep one on my office desk and also buy for my kids, trying to educate them how they can watch either some of the kids, they want to go solo mining or join the pool, so they get payouts, like everyday payouts or monthly payouts as it goes. So that will promote awareness and embrace the Bitcoin mining concept and mindset. Because in Africa, Bitcoin itself came with a lot of Ponzi kind of speculative ideas, which actually do us harm than good. Because whoever you start the topic of Bitcoin, no, don't go there. Come on, but if you're having a mini miner with you, power it on and then show what's happening there. It's more helping to convince. Yeah.
So if I may also add, just gonna add my 2 cents. So in Africa, we're having great progress in having the mining hashing power decentralization, but especially for Africa, because we are in a Bitcoin Africa conference, it's very important for Africa to also to bring in the Bitcoin nodes also closer to Africa, so that because the Bitcoin miner hashers, they help Africa participate in the energy economy in the world. But also, if Africa can participate in the Bitcoin nodes in terms of the Bitcoin block templates, Africa can participate also in the Bitcoin decision in terms of transactions, what goes in the chain. So it goes hand in hand, Bitcoin mining hashers, Bitcoin mining nodes in Africa, and it's going to be a great revolution for decentralization. So next, let's open up the Q&A questions for the audience. Any questions from the audience? We got a few minutes. Any extra microphone?
Thank you, Daniel. So my name is Hussein Issa from Bitcoin Hela podcast. So I have a question to Dr. Laban. From Brains, what's the strategy that you have? Have you said that you want to educate Africa? You need to provide like programs to educate them on Bitcoin mining, or maybe workshops. As Brains, what the strategies you have to come here in Africa and to educate and making sure that we're using this unused electricity? And another question to Eric, I wanted to ask, you spoke about mining has 2 products, that is Bitcoin and heat. Heat is like it provides global warming and issues of like melting of ice and stuff like that. What are you planning, or maybe what's the advocacy level you've reached to make sure that people know that mining is not providing harmful products at the end? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that brilliant question. As far as Brains is concerned, the future is in Africa, and we're looking for green fields, brown fields, and partners to collaborate in the energy space. And we are already collaborating with Gridless. And the way we look at Africa is the potential. Of course, those African countries, I know in Angola it's banned. Some African countries need education. So you see more and more sponsorship from Brains for such events like Nairobi Bitcoin event for visibility purposes. And our strategy is to partner with the local partners who knows the local environment better, and then try to harvest the energy and also help on the efficient, smart energy systems, which already we have experience in Texas with the mining, and that experience, and with partnerships with Gridless, together we are impactful on the African continent, because we see Africa as in the next decade as like I mentioned, Africa is not energy poor, it's utilization poor, in the sense that most of the hydro, if you look at the International Energy Agency, they are saying 80% of potential for hydro in Africa is underutilized, which means energy has already been produced somewhere, but utilized. And this is where brains come in the equation of leveraging on smart energy, flexible load, a kind of grid stabilization, and also for revenue monetizing of what we call energy, exporting energy to value. And that value can help a lot of African countries, especially those struggling with Forex. Cryptocurrency is one area. The central government in Czech, they $2 billion in cryptocurrency just to invest, which means that if African countries, those who will jump on board to effectively utilize energy efficiently, then we can be partners with Brains, and also they would be in the forefront, like countries like Ethiopia, which has seen an opportunity. There exists an opportunity in Africa or underutilized energy, and that's something we want to tap in long term as Brains. Thank you.
Yeah, just on the excess heat, there's no excess. Like, we're talking about just excess heat. We're not talking about excess like carbon, which is where a lot of the global warming conversation comes from. So any of the heat coming off of Bitcoin miners in Africa are not having any effect on that.
Okay. So just a follow-up on one of your insights, Eric. I think you properly highlighted the need to have a more decentralized miner infrastructure, right? And I'm just curious, is there any initiative, especially in Africa, that intends to highlight and, to highlight institutions or plans that have a good, proper energy compute, and present Bitcoin to them as an alternative fallback for their surplus energy? Because I think, here's my thought, I think Africa is really, really rich on energy, especially renewable energy, green energy. But we have these institutions that do not just see Bitcoin as a tool to immediately monetize their energy and move that money around the world, right? So is there any intentional initiative to empower such platforms or companies that are high on energy, but do not have the Bitcoin spec? So
Yeah. So about a year ago, the Africa Bitcoin Institute was formed, and it was formed to create the different research and the reports that the policymakers could then utilize for when they needed to look at the laws and regulations in a country, and is also for the different ministries and the different companies who are working in either energy or money or whatever it is, right? And a lot of that was driven by a report by a lady out of Zambia, actually, on the usage and lack of usage of Bitcoin mining in African countries, and she did a continent-wide study on it. So there is some value built into this research that's being done. Is it being put in front of the right institutions? Who knows? Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. When we go talk to people, we do, but then we don't talk to everybody. Am I answering your question?
yeah, I was keen on the part of sometimes this institution do realize that and do something. So I was keen on any such institutions that have maybe
Have started mining or not started mining?
started.
Okay.
As an impact of this ABI work.
We've had, let me put it this way. We have gotten very far in negotiations, even to signing with even some nation states as gridless on doing mining for them in their on their substations. Not all that you see, not everything that's public is what's going on. So there's a lot of things behind the scenes that aren't talked about until they're real, and they shouldn't be talked about until they're real.
Well, I just wanted to add some more strategic models. I think I didn't mention which Brains is using on the African continent space in terms of partnerships, strategic partnerships. If the African partner is having a potential site for energy production, then we can invest, or we can partner, or the African partner can get royalties and Brains can invest and harvest the energy into developing strategic infrastructure for energy. Or the partner can give us land, potential site, and get royalties from, of course, these are, you're talking about 10, 25 years, long-term vision for Africa, and to enter into partnerships, especially power purchase agreements. Or, those models are what we are using to get partners, because we know that we need partnership on the African continent also to help community social responsibilities to develop where opportunity lies in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric, Dr. Laban. So officially, we have run out of our official time. So if there's no more questions, maybe just to close it up, let's keep in mind that so in Africa we need more miners, miner hashers. But what's happening is that we need to remember that the mining nodes, they may be in Europe, they may be in America, they may be out of Africa. So even though you have miner hashes in Africa, you may have mining nodes out of Africa. So we need to bring in the miner nodes to Africa so that besides the miner hash participating in the energy economy, also the Africa Bitcoin nodes can participate in the block template, what goes in a chain. Okay, so that's very important. And we need to close. Yes, and also even the pleb, even the pleb at home can have a mining node. So that's something very powerful for Africa when you bring in the mining node and the hashers. So that's the future. Otherwise, we're gonna have miner hash in Africa, but the nodes are outside of Africa. So with that in mind, okay, let's give a round of applause to Eric and Dr. Laban. Okay, thank you.